Hello there, this is Chadderbox, and for the first time, this video comes with an epilepsy warning. If you have photosensitive epilepsy, click away. This video may be good, but it certainly isn't to die for. Anyway, last weekend was the GMTK Game Jam 2021, a monumental event for most game developers, and certainly something that a lot of people had on their calendars considering over 20,000 people joined it. I was pretty prepared for this jam. By 7 PM I had all of my programs open, ready to get started. I tuned in to watch the theme be announced, which was Joined Together. Now, I didn't think this theme was as good as other GMTK game jams have had. For this jam, I wanted to try something different. I spend a lot of time programming, so I like to try and have good gameplay, because that tends to be the main thing you can control with your programming. But as a result, other elements tend to be subpar. I decided for this jam I would work completely differently, sacrificing gameplay for the best sound, visuals and music for the game that I could make. I imported my base library that I use for making games, which contains basically everything I need already, like a basic character controller, sound handling and scene management. So I only needed to focus on actually programming the gameplay. I had a general idea for what I wanted to make, but nothing solid, so instead of starting on gameplay, I got to work on music. This took me about half an hour, just some really ambient synth. It isn't anything special, but it certainly isn't an awful ear-splitting mess of bleeps and bloops like other game jam music tends to end up as. But now I'd made the music, I had a general idea for the style I wanted to work with. I wanted to make a really dark and atmospheric game, so I slapped down my basic player and set them up to move pretty slowly. I then got to work on the environment. Before this jam I had about 2 minutes experience of using Unity's terrain system, but it was quite intuitive to learn and I quickly had some nice mountains placed around the player and I could move around. The character controller doesn't interact in the best way with the terrain, but it was good enough. Now I had the basic gameplay down, it was time to work on the visuals. Because the game would be running in the browser, I didn't want to have to use Unity's post-processing stack because it tends to be really heavy on performance. So I initially set out to do something without any post-processing at all. Just going for a monochromatic colour style using my gradient shader. I actually really liked the look of the gradient shader on the ground, but it certainly felt like something was missing, so I looked for some bloom shaders with better performance online, and I found this one. It was alright, it did everything I wanted, so I set it up, but things still didn't look right. I deviated from my monochromatic style because I wanted to highlight interesting things with very vibrant pinky purple gradients, and I thought that looked really cool. This style reminded me a lot of stereotypical 80s aesthetics, and I wanted to try and implement a VHS look shader, so I started programming one. Wait a second. Yoink! Now I added this to the game, but it had a load of weird artifacting that was really intense, and kinda just made it really hard to tell what was going on, even though it looked really cool. But from there, things were really starting to come together into this sort of dreamy aesthetic. Now this looked pretty good already in my opinion, but I did some more tweaking with my shader and accidentally made this effect, which I thought looked nuts. This gave me a really cool idea for the story and also a way to link the gameplay to the theme. The idea was that you were separated from your partner by this weird glitchy thing, and you had to try and join together again. Or if that was too obscure, you're also joined together over a walkie-talkie, where the person on the other side will talk to you and try to guide you back. With that done, I started working on the programming side of things. The programming for this was really simple. I just programmed a custom trigger system that I could use in the inspector using Unity actions, and then wired everything up to my custom systems. I used these triggers to apply effects and play voice lines. From here, the gameplay was done. I just needed to extend it, so I worked more on the map. I added these lava lakes that serve as a fail state and made the player restart the level at the last checkpoint. These checkpoints were placed very liberally, so the player wouldn't be too annoyed if they fell off. Now I just needed to get some voice lines into the game. I wrote them out in about 5 minutes and then just needed to record them. I was considering doing them myself, but I thought having someone else do it would be more interesting, so I asked around. Thankfully, a friend of the channel called Retro was up for it, and he nailed out the voice lines really quickly, ready for me to edit them. There'll be a link to Retro's channel in the description. Editing this audio was pretty fun. I ran them through a compressor and an EQ before applying a high-pass filter to make the basic radio effect. For the ones in the glitch dimension, I wanted to add more warp and distortion. So I ran those through my secret source effect, Isotope Vinyl, on essentially the lowest fidelity settings I could manage while still having them be comprehensible. After that, I imported them into Unity and set them to fire when the player hit a trigger. At this point, the game was basically done. I had a bit less than a day left of the jam too, but I decided to go to bed and get a bit more done in the morning. The morning was mainly filled with issues with more bug fixes and working on art for the itch page. After that, I uploaded the game and submitted it. I'm pretty happy with how this game came out, to be honest. It's something really different from what I normally make, and I think I learned a lot from it. isn't particularly fun, but you can play it by following the link in the description. However, a game that is fun though is Propulsion, a game that I'm working on, and you can wishlist it on Steam right now. But that's all for now. Subscribe for more, and if you like the result of me staying up till 1 AM 2 nights in a row, then be sure to like the video.